All right, here we are, Leadership Happy Hour. My name is Chip Lutz. I've got my vodka tonic. I'm all set for an awesome little bit of time with my friend Scott Lesnick. Scott also is a speaker like me. Speaks on a lot of different varied things. Leadership, a little bit of sales once in a while. But he's got an awesome story and wrote a book called Kid Jacked, which if you don't own it, you should have it in your library. If nothing else, just to say you've got a book by Scott Lesnick, because I think that raises your coolness level quite a bit. Also, an interesting thing about Scott is, Scott is just one of the nicest people you're going to meet. Will do pretty much anything for you. And he is on his second time running around the earth. Not actually running around, but he just runs every day. And so he keeps track of it. And he doesn't brag about it. It's just one of those things where he keeps track. It's like, hey, I'm on my second time around. And I was like, man, I'm like nearly on my second time to the Dunkin' Donuts. And there we go. Today we're going to talk a little about generational diversity, something about Scott speaks on, something I speak on. I'm going to defer to Scott on most things because I like to learn new things. And Scott's going to be the sensei today. So Scott, cheers to you. Welcome to Leadership Happy Hour, Leadership and Libations. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, my friend.
I like Leadership Happy Hour. I like libations, and I too am a speaker. I got to know you many years ago now, saw you speak, asked you for some help. You and others were kind enough to give me help, and now I do it full time. I love it, and it's one of those things where you jump in and you go, well, this just sounds like the coolest thing in the world. I want to speak on this. Well, how do you begin? How do you build your business? And it ain't easy. But once you get things going, the camaraderie with speakers is pretty tight.
Yeah,
it's a great group of individuals who generally like to give back and help because we're all in it together. And I found that a lot of work is the key. And being very, very diligent in what you do. And it's easy when you're kind of on your own to goof off. So I have a schedule. I stick to it. And then I had to come up with topics. So I've got a book, Kid Jack, which is pretty good. True story of how I got my kids back from the Middle East when they were kidnapped. That one's fun. Now. And then I love speaking on generations because I'm passionate. As a baby boomer, I started to realize years ago that boomers, millennials, and Gen Xers weren't connecting. And then if you put the silent veterans in there, who are older than baby boomers, there was a real wedge that was being driven in there. So I started to watch speakers, and I said, this guy sucks. This gal's great. This guy's this one doesn't know squat. And I was looking at their presentations thinking, wait a minute.
Cheers.
I want to do that better. So I began to study. I became a student of generations. I watched again, I read, I researched, and then I went out kind of like a comedian does. Instead of going out and trying to get paid to speak, I would go to little small venues that speakers will go to and go for free so that I could work on the presentation, build up an hour-long presentation or more. And it became so much fun. And then I came up with this one day, this light bulb moment. I thought, you know what? The generations thing is great, but I want to fly millennials flags from a baby boomer's perspective and turn things upside down. And that's one of the things I do now. And it's wonderful to see people in the beginning of a presentation kind of sitting there like this or going like that or going like that. And by the end, I've won most of them over, and they understand the importance of generations, blending the generations, and why millennials rock and they're here to stay.
So you're a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer.
Just barely.
I am one of the, it's fun. I am one of the older Gen Xers. Usually the cutoff, the start date is 64, 65. I was born in 68. I am one of the, one of the first Gen Xers in the workforce. So I started working, right when I turned 18 in the Navy. And so, but the way I look at it is the time frames is generationally isn't as important as looking at what resonates you as, the things within the generation that resonate with you. Like I'm a Gen Xer, but I grew up in a boomer household. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. All my brothers and sisters are boomers. My parents, you called them vet. I call them radio babies, but what do you call them?
Some people call them vets, silent vets.
Okay, so that so like for me, my understanding of the generations, I'm kind of like I don't always fit in exactly one place. I mean, and you look at the that diversity factor. A lot of times we look at the whole thing as kind of it's almost a stereotype anyway, because we're trying to like fit everybody into one box. But it's interesting to look at those different things that make us a little bit different. So it's kind of interesting. You talked about flying the millennial flag. Like me, my kids, I've got 4 millennials. They're all pretty much in the workforce now. I've got one high school senior, 2 students, and a daughter that's finishing up 4 years in the Army. So it's an interesting thing you say, flying that flag. How do you look at them as different than the rest of the generations?
Can you repeat that last part?
How do you look at the millennials as different from the other generations? What makes them different?
Well, real quickly, going back to something you said, I completely agree. When you are by age one generation, you're usually 2 generations of person. So I'm definitely a Gen Xer and baby boomer.
Yeah.
And Gen Xers are usually Gen Xers and boomers, or Gen Xers and millennials if they're a really young Xer. And they tend to cross over. We tend to cross over into 2 generations. And that's why I can relate to different people. But millennials, by sheer number, so there's over 83 million of them, right? So there's more of them than there were boomers. So they should be called super boomers or something, right? And time out. Pardon me, it's the beer. I never burp on air. Right. It could have been the beef stick I had before, though. Beef stick and beer. There's a combination. Anyway, millennials are so incredibly important because now they're not just babies anymore either. These are young men and women that are in their 30s and in their 20s and are rocking it and are extremely passionate, vocal. They want quick feedback and recognition. And they're a force that's not going to stop. And what I love is the fact that they're starting to get into more roles of management, and that people above them don't quite get it sometimes, don't quite like it. But it's kind of like it's like trying to stop an avalanche. Unless you have superpowers and you're from the planet Krypton, it ain't going to happen. So you have to figure out ways to blend them. And that's something that you do so well too. And I think that's why we enjoy speaking on it.
So when you look at flying that millennial flag, what do you do to, how do you do that? Because I know that, in the research that I've done between all the generations, it seems that each generation thinks that the younger generation is, kind of screwed up, and they don't work as hard as, they worked, and that they have some sense of entitlement. And I hear this all the time. Well, these young people, they have this sense of entitlement and blah, blah, blah. And I don't look at it like that. I look at it a little bit different. I look at it as, positive expectation, and that, our job as leaders is try to, curb that, positive expectation into kind of a reality. How do we mentor? How do we manage? How do we coach those people to take that positive expectation and, focus it on the mission, on the things that we need to get done, so.
I'm sorry. What was your question? I was watching your hand movement. It was so brilliant that no, I'm kidding. I have an answer. This is what I do. One of the things I start out with, and that's why I love watching other speakers and then other speakers who present on generations. One of the things I discuss early in a presentation, or at least I point out, is how the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, and before the boomers, the silent vets, the generations before us all thought that we were going to drop the ball. They all thought that we weren't going to be that good. They all thought that we weren't going to do that great for the country. And that's never been the case. Every generation moves the country forward. Every generation wants the country to succeed. However, because they're 20 years apart, sometimes they look at things differently. Sometimes technology has taken over. And once I share that idea with folks, they're able to go into their own heads and personalize it and go, yeah, I remember people saying that about me, and I'm doing pretty good. And then they're ready to receive more information.
All right. So flying that millennial flag, what is how you flying that?
Well, one of the things I do is it depends, because millennials are really mooting on. The truth is, by the way, Three Stooges bottle opener. If I were to press it right now on metal, I want to show you what it does. Quick sidebar. Watch. See if it works. If I can get it to, because it does a curly thing. It worked when I opened the beer. Guess it's not that thirsty right now. We'll come back to the Stooges. One of the things I let them know is why millennials do things differently, why baby boomers and Gen Xers are one of the reasons that they do things differently, and why you need to embrace it. I mean, for instance, there's companies now that get it, and big time companies, names we know, companies we use their products of, who understood years ago that if they were to engage and retain millennials, that they had to allow them to do some things at work that kept them competitive, kept them employed, and kept them there, and also kept productivity high. So one of the things that happened is they decided, you know what, if you're working and your efficiency is good and you're plugged in and you're doing this, that's okay. We're okay with that now. And once upon a time, when millennials first entered the workplace, that was a no-no, and they used to get a bunch of crap. That doesn't happen anymore. So something as simple as that.
Well, it depends on I probably depends on the workspace on whether it happens or not. I think an interesting dynamic, like between people our age and people that are a little bit younger, is that they say that generals fight the wars of their youth. That we usually as leaders fall back on what we learned when we were growing up. So like, even though I'm an Xer, I was trained by older generations in the workforce. People that were boomers and older than boomers, and so a lot of things that I know as a leader, I learned from those people. And that, we expect the younger generation to kind of fall in line, and we're used to just kind of like taking orders. And got leadership just told me, I doubt you could do that on board a ship. True. That's what I love about Blab, is that people can, chime in. So anytime you guys want to like ask, throw something in there, throw it in there. That's it's great about Blab. But for I forgot exactly where I was going on that. Whatever. Anyway. But what I think is, so we're used to, taking orders and, not asking why as much. And what I think is interesting about, like, with my kids and the younger people that I've led, is that they do ask why. And I think it's important for us as leaders to give them the why and because when we give the why, what it does is it helps them understand where they fit and where they provide value. And a lot of times, and I reference my son. He's like, because I was talking to him about the workforce and taking direction and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he was like, look, I don't want people to tell me how to do it. I want you to tell me what needs to be done and let me work it out on my own. Let me figure out and make those mistakes. And I think that's an awesome way to look at it, is that, if we're there as coaches and guides to kind of like figure out, help them, guide them along the way, not micromanage them, but let them figure out, it's going to be a much richer learning experience for them.
Yeah, I agree. Empower your people is what God Leadership just said, and that's absolutely true. The beautiful thing about millennials is when they were raised, a lot of them were raised in an environment that was much more open. Parents were more hand-on. Of course, everybody would win a trophy, nobody lost, and all this, and so they were coddled a little bit more, and that's the way things are. However, if there's something that they need to know, tell them what they need to know, and then let them go do it. And the shorter the better, because their conversations, their tweets, their texts, they're usually boom, boom, and then off to the next thing. So if you get into a big diatribe, you're going to lose them quickly, because they just want to know what you need me to do, and I got it done. And if they have a question, they'll come to you, because I have to say, I've never seen a generation that is so bold when it comes to asking questions to people in authority. And I mean people at the top or people at the top of the top. They're not intimidated, which is kind of cool.
It is kind of cool in that, it's, in a lot of ways, like you were talking about, technology has a lot to do with that. The flattening of the organization where, people are more accessible and they're used to it. I think about my own kids. I remember, like, if I had to call my dad at work about something, I had to either be bleeding or dying. I mean, those are the parameters right there. I remember being in California and I was speaking out there, and I remember my son calling me and saying, call me, I'm 1,500 miles away. And he's calling me and he says, "Hey, Dad." I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Ben?" He's like, "Can I have one of these Oreos?" I'm 1,500 miles away, but because of technology, it was,
you would know.
Yeah,
he did it.
I appreciate the fact that he asked, but just the same, even within the hierarchy of, a family, everything's been kind of, flattened a little bit. We communicate a little bit more. We're used to reaching out and touching people a little bit more. And that we as leaders kind of like, we have to, we change our mindset on that. We have to, and I'll reference this to something that, we talk about in my grad classes, that there's this concept called psychological size. And you can think about it as far as that, when we were growing up, think about your parents, we looked at them as some mix between, like Superman or, Wonder Woman, that they were bigger than we are, right? And a lot of times we look at our leaders and our managers the same way. We look at them bigger. And what that happens is if they're bigger and we're smaller, it keeps it's not prone to two-way communication. Anything we can do to decrease our psychological size makes us a little more even and more approachable. And that's what we want with, pretty much all our generations, but especially our younger generations, if we really want to retain them, is that, we've got to, decrease that psychological size so we can, we're more approachable. We have two-way communication because we want to know when something's a problem before it's a problem, period. I mean, that's regardless of where you're at. I mean, I don't want to hear about it after the fact, because I look all scary up here because I'm a leader. I want to decrease that size. I want to be approachable so people come to me on stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you look at statistics, and when I do presentations, I try to have some statistics, but not stuff that'll bore people too much. But one thing that's a misnomer is that millennials go from job to job more than, let's say, Gen Xers, and that's not true. They're pretty much right at the same. But what I've noticed also in my presentations, and I've begun to change it a little bit, is I talk a lot about boomers. I talk a ton about millennials, and I wasn't giving enough props to Gen Xers. And the reason I wasn't is because they're out there, they do their thing, they're rocking, and they're significantly smaller in number.
40 million.
As far as how many were born. And so I was doing numbers of people, not significantly small. Anyway, you know where I'm going. So the important part for me now is to remember to embrace Gen Xers a little bit more when I'm speaking to, because there's so many things not only that they've contributed to, but because their numbers are smaller, we hear about the big numbers on the other side, and we tend to forget about.
What's interesting you say about that is that they are the smaller generation, 40 million, half the size of boomers, half the size of the millennials. By 2019, the research shows that millennials be ruling the world.
Yeah. Pretty much, and that's around the corner. And the thing is, they know that, but they're not quite in power enough yet. But they're every year. I mean, because what's that thing with my generation, boomers? There literally are 10,000 of us retiring every day.
That's a mouse.
That's pretty simple math.
Last year was the first year boomers became retirement age eligible.
Yeah, so that's well over 1 million a year, and all that does is make it much more advantageous for Gen Xers who can't wait for some boomers to retire, and millennials, because as Gen Xers continue to move, there's space and so forth. So sooner than later, millennials are going to be in real positions of power. I already know people that are millennials. I've had to help them, coach them, if you will, on how to deal with managing older employees. Because here's folks that are in their young 30s and they've got people in their 40s and 50s or 60s that they're managing, and it's not how it used to be. It used to be, the older people manage the younger people. That's not the same anymore either, and that's a real challenge to get across and to let people know what they have to do and how to do it. And then how do Xers deal with a millennial who's 10 years younger, who's their manager. It's not always
No.
easy.
How would you deal?
Sometimes not so well
tell
at
me,
the
Dr.
end,
Scott,
too.
how would you deal with that?
Chip, first wait a minute. Chip,
I'll need
that's a
another drink
good
of this for
question.
this one.
I would take a sip of my beer, and I've learned what you already know, and one of the things you speak about as a leader is communication, and it really boils down to that. You can't help the age you
Right.
are, but you can help how you communicate about things, listen to other people's concerns, and try to bring things in. And then, some of the commonalities. You and I spoke earlier about some of the things that generations have in common, and sometimes when you can bring that together, every generation has kind of a love for their family, right? And you pointed that out earlier when we were rapping, and sometimes with millennials, their family literally means their friends more than their peeps, and people have to understand how all that works. But there's certain things that we have in common, and at the end of the day, you still have to answer to whoever's in charge. And if that person's younger and they've got game, or their game's pretty good, then that's going to be the person you have to listen to.
Well, two things. One, no matter how fast and hard you run, there's always somebody running harder and faster. That's a fact. And that's it. But I remember when I was
you're correct, Forrest.
I was a 30-year-old lieutenant, and I'm 50 now, but I was a 30-year-old lieutenant, and I was in charge of Got leadership said senior enlisted personnel in the military deal, young officers in charge. Yeah, all the time. Absolutely. And here's the key, and I'm going to refer to that, is that, if you really, as a leader, even though you're in charge of people that are older, you got to respect that experience. I mean, even when I was a junior officer, I'd already been in the Navy 11 years, and so I had quite a bit of experience. But, I was 30 years old, and I had people working for me that were the same age as my dad. They had already retired. They had already retired from the military, and they were in their second career within the Department of Defense. And I looked at them as a resource. Is that I didn't always know what to do, but I could always trust that one of them had been there, done that, had the experience. And so for me as a leader, it's like I use them as a resource. Like, hey, I am at a loss here. What do I need to do? And they would say, it's like, almost like I was their son. They take me aside. It's like, let me help you out here. And so it was, I appreciated that. Great? But
did they ever offer you a stick of gum?
Yeah, they did. Because after the end of the day, my breath might be a little bit bad. Anyway,
well,
I'm going to take another sip of my vodka tonic here. Anyway,
I have to say too, I agree. It's interesting because when I was growing up, if you were older than me, the respect was there because I figured you had game. If you proved you didn't, well, right away things would change. With millennials today, they understand that there's a hierarchy, but they're only going to respect it if they're given reason to. So you have to show them that you've got game and earn their respect. Where before, when I was growing up, you kind of respected because if you didn't, shit would go down. And now today, that doesn't happen as much. And millennials understand that somebody older than them may be their leader, but they still want to see that they've got the game. And they're going to challenge, they're going to test, they're going to ask questions. Why? Because when they were at the dinner table, we allowed them to challenge, ask questions, and do all that stuff. And they take that to work. Not only do they take it to work, but millennials are the number one generation when it comes to talking to their family and friends about work. So if there's stuff going down at work, guaranteed, dollars to donuts, their parents are still involved today and know about what's going on. And when we were doing that, our folks didn't know squat. You still making a paycheck? Yes, I am. Good. Get out of here.
I remember my dad. I would talk to my dad once. Well, what's going on? And I would tell him, he's like, I don't know. He'd give me a little bit of advice. My daughters call me every day on their way to work. Okay. Every day on their way to work, they give me a call. Like, oh, this is going on. What do you think, Dad? I'm like, well, you try to get the best advice possible. But I want to go back to what you were saying before, as far as the difference. Like when you're an older person working for a younger person, you can hope that the person respects your experience base and goes to you, but that's not always the case. You get some,
No.
because I think that we do a really poor job. We do a really good job from promoting technical experts. We do, but I think traditionally we do a very poor job of developing people into leaders, so they know that, hey, this is, because the only secret leading people is that it's all about people. That's the big secret. And so, if you're not in tune with that and knowing that you should go back to that you should go to your team and get the advice of your team, because it's going to make everything a little bit better. For you as the older work for somebody younger, how would you deal with something like that?
When I was in corporate for 28 years, I had the honor of working with and leading teams of different ages, and one of the things that was interesting to me is how there were some leaders who didn't first of all, our company did a pretty darn good job at training leaders and training management, because let's be honest, when you're put into a role of management and you've never been there before, half of it's flying by the seat of the pants and everything. Another part of it is training, and if you get some proper training, that helps. And one of the things that they worked on a lot, and you mentioned, and not surprising expert at leadership, is how communications are incredibly important. And if you're not communicating, everything's lost. And I forgot what your question was, because I was thinking about something else. Do you remember what it was, so I can get back there? It could be the Stella. It could be, I don't know. It could be the
you are a lightweight drinker. I'm just telling you, you are. I'm just half beer.
I am, but I always have been.
You're already down for the count.
Before designated drivers were in vogue, I was already a designated driver.
All
right, what can I say?
Here, got leadership put on here. If parents want to complain about millennials, they only have themselves to blame because they're the ones that raised them. Yes.
Yeah, they're totally. Yes, I mean, word. Yes. Yeah, I think we should do we should do a got leadership on here too, because whoever leadership is, they got game, and they're absolutely right. That's why I don't complain, and I will say something else too. Do you remember your question, by the way? Because maybe leadership does.
How would you deal with if you're the older person working for a younger person and they completely don't respect your experience base? How would you deal with that? I mean, because what we're talking about is you're obviously going to stay where you're going to stay because you've been there a while. All right. So, yeah. But then we come down to engagement. Yeah. Well, why? We would call them in the Navy when people are getting close to retiring. They'd be retired on active duty. They'd be on the road program. So, yes. How do you keep that person engaged so they're not on the road program? And, so they are you can still be a resource. I mean, how do you keep your own engagement up there when you're working for, a young kid that I call them kids. They're not kids. A young adult.
If they're that much younger, I'm surprised you didn't come up with this answer. Obviously, you're a novice, but let me help you. I booby trap their desk. I booby trap the chair. I make things blow up. Of course, they don't know it's me. It doesn't lead to me. It leads to somebody else. And I don't hurt them, but I do little things to let them know, hey, they better watch out. I've got game. I'm older, and I deserve respect. If that doesn't work, then I go the old-fashioned way. And maybe it just comes from experience, but it's communication. Hey, can we sit down and talk for a little while? And carve out a little time to chat. We find a little time, we chat, and hopefully we can just chat person to person, find some common ground. And what I would do also is I'd just be pretty much open and honest. Go, look, this is what's going on. And I'll be honest, it's not an elephant in the room, but it's a baby gorilla. I'm sitting here because you're 23 years younger than me, and I have to answer to you. It's a little difficult. It's kind of tough, almost like if you had to answer to a 14-year-old who was a genius. It'd be difficult.
I would short sheet that person's bed and probably
short sheeting is good, but again, I didn't.
If they were driving,
I would probably just light a fart on fire and see what that did, because I don't know how to short sheet, but I'm sure God leadership does. But it's difficult, but it's still about communication and spending some time going, do you think, can we carve out a little time to talk? I've got a couple of concerns, and they want that. And the young leader, I guarantee the young leader is going to learn from the person who's been around longer. But it's also the tough part is that fine line where the older person has to show that little bit of respect, like they do to our kids sometimes when we don't want to hear what our kids are saying anymore, and we love them dearly, but we're like, oh, come on, it's our family, so we have to be nice. We can't just come out there and bang them, even though we're our parents, so we still have to be cool. You almost have to do that as an adult who's 55 being led by a 35-year-old.
What's funny is that, Got Leadership just put on there, you have to be humble. I absolutely agree with that. I remember when I was a young first-class petty officer, and
I want to meet Leadership, by the way. Leadership's got game.
I worked for this guy that he was a major league a-hole, right? And so, like, whenever I was wrong, he would beat me up. And so what it forced me to do was research everything. And I learned a lot working for him because I had to research everything. So I would come to his desk and say, like, hey, this is what this is, Chief. And he's like, no, it's not. I'm like, I would say, you want to bet? And he knew if I said you want to bet, I had researched it. And I knew that he didn't, that I knew something he didn't know. And then he would be like, oh, well, that probably changed. He would say with a little face, but I knew that was the case, but I didn't push it because it's like, I would go back to my desk and be like,
it got you a little bit. Yeah. Now here's what at least 14,000 listeners, I'm guessing, who are watching right now would want this question.
But that's cool. Two of them.
They'd want this question asked. Did you ever ask him, do you want to bet, when you hadn't done research? Because you kind of knew you might get him anyway. Okay. You did want. Okay.
Well,
so you were smart.
There was a respect factor, and two.
Yeah, that's true.
One, there's a respect factor, and two, there was a fear factor that he was scary. He's Got Leadership on there. The chief is never wrong. That's true in the Navy. That's just the way it is. Even if he's wrong, he's really not wrong because you work for him and you have to do what that's the way it is. It's a Navy thing.
Well, okay, so that's the Navy. Maybe that's other armed services too. But doesn't that really kind of, when some things go to both sides? So maybe that's in the civilian side too. You've got a VP of whatever. He or she's never wrong, even if they're wrong, right? And you're not going to totally challenge them, because if you do, things may not end up too well, even if you know you're in the right. And I had that in corporate several times where people came after me. They were even higher up than I was, and I knew not only was I in the right, they were wrong, and I could prove it. And it's funny how those folks who came after me, person by person, ended up either getting fired or leaving the company. And I learned lessons about that, but that's another topic for today.
Leadership karma. You don't have to really do anything; it'll take care of itself.
You can almost tell too. If you're this way to me, you're that way to others. Somebody's going to catch on. You're going to be gone.
So things I think is as far as I brought my tumbler with vodka tonics, and it's like I'm towards the end. It's so sad. Anyway, I think one thing that's as human beings, I think we all want to be special. So we look for things that are differences between us. So we can I'm superior because of this. Like even generationally, we look at it like this. Like, I had to work like this. I had to walk 5 miles to school in the snow uphill both ways and blah, blah, blah. You don't have it as hard as I had it. I had to really work for stuff. And we look for things to differentiate ourselves, to make ourselves feel special. I don't think that really makes us bad. I think it just makes us human beings. I just think that's how we're made. Yeah.
It's who we are.
I think that, when we're looking at, generational diversity and leading generations, what's more important, like you referred to earlier, was to look for, where are we similar? Where can we connect? Because where we can connect, like I said, leadership's all about people. And, that means that we're going to connect, connect someplace. And you mentioned on there, like family. Is like, if I can connect with you, I used to have, like, when I was in D.C. and I had a guy working for me gosh, he had already retired from the Army. He was in the DOD, and he was smart. He knew the job, but, no matter what idea I had, he didn't want to do. He was like a rock. He just was going to let it pass him by. But I found that if I started talking to him about, we both had daughters, and my daughters were young at the time. If I went up to him, I was like, hey, let's go on my daughters. What do you think about this? And he would give me a little bit of advice, and then it would completely change the dynamic of our relationship and our conversation. So then it would be more apt to
Yeah,
listen to like, hey, what do you think about this? How do you think that we should handle this? And, even though it was really my idea, then it became our idea. And it was, he wouldn't block me anymore. And I really think it's important.
What was he
Oh
older?
my gosh, yeah, he was older than me. He was, he's dead now. But funny story about his death, but I won't tell you about it. But it wasn't funny that he's dead. It
Next time.
was funny that he was how it came about. In a way, it would make a great Lifetime movie. Anyway, I think it's.
I actually have a couple of funny death stories too, and it's not supposed to be funny, but how people died that I actually know. It's like, you got to be kidding me! That really happened.
Whole different topic.
Oh my gosh!
People that are,
yes, for another day.
So,
generationally speaking.
So, what are some things you think that where we can connect intergenerationally?
Well, the big thing for me, and you mentioned it before too, with connectivity, is listening, because there's different needs, wants, and desires of every generation, and then there's certain things that generations have in common. So, as a leader, if you're leading a team, and that team is, obviously composed of several people or more, it's your job to get to know them a little bit.
Yeah,
because they're different. Not everything that matters to one person matters to another. And little tiny bits of conversation are extremely important because, and honestly, don't count on your mind to remember every single thing. Write a couple of notes about that person, have it on a Post-it note in your desk, have it on your computer somewhere so that you can refer back to it. People still like to be wished a happy birthday. You remember everything that's going on? How could you remember my birthday? Hey, I care about you, and you do because you wrote it down. And then there's the listening aspect. Everybody wants to be. They want to know that your door is open, and you'll listen to them, not always act on things. And that's with all different generations. And then the real key too is getting the different generations to connect with one another. And if that's an issue, I always suggest, or I'll come in and go through some exercises to not only teach different generations deeper dive about who they all are, and again, their needs, wants, and desires, but how to communicate and work well with each other. Because all it does is it makes your job easier, and productivity goes up, and retention goes up too. And those are things that really benefit everyone.
Right. Yeah, that's where, in the end, we're looking at, we want to retain people, because it costs a lot of money to lose.
Absolutely.
So if we don't want a revolving door, we've got to find ways to, like I said, shift that, our attitude to one of, how do we coach and mentor people? Hey, my first command, nobody wanted me to work for them because I was a little bit cocky. I asked why about everything, and it wasn't until I had a really good supervisor that took me under their wing and said, this is what you need to do, that I actually, how they say in Full Metal Jacket, I was born again hard. I had it shifted my mindset. It's like, all right, well, that makes sense. And I think that's what we really need to do is we need to, help people. We all had mentors. That's the real.
Absolutely.
That's the real legacy. Policies, plans.
You don't get anywhere without them.
Yeah. Policies, plans, and procedures go away. The only thing that really matters is the investment we make in other people. And that's the real legacy that we can leave. And so, just like other people helped us, we've got to help other people along the way.
And I agree. It's our job as leaders. It's the leader's job to get these folks together, to communicate them, because whoever's in that position got there because of help too. Mm-hmm. People were mentored along the way, and the communication and developing those relationships is important sometimes. And I think the good leaders know that and remember that. And the reason I had success in my life was mentors, people who backed me, people who put their arm on my shoulder and said, hey kid, why don't you consider this? Yeah. And I was smart enough to listen enough that things work out. Yeah. But communication, my friend.
Yeah, that's what I remember my first chief said, like, Lutz, you're a big soup sandwich. It's like, what the soup sandwich? What the hell is that? Anyway,
I'll tell you what, the Navy comes up with some of the best lines.
It was great.
Is there like a book that you guys study when you're in basic or something and you have to learn all these Navy terms that aren't really Navy related, but they're just silly stuff that you just came up with.
It's part of the culture and stuff that's passed on, generation to generation. Just great stuff. Some of it isn't.
It's a powerful fraternity, is what it is.
Oh yeah, but it's not consumable for the general public. They wouldn't really get it.
Well, you know what? It depends on who you're hanging with. The general public who hasn't served may not know it all, but we can sure laugh at some of this stuff. I have several friends who served and several in the Navy, including my godson, and the stories that he's able to share with me and some of the fun things. Sometimes it makes me go, God, that kind of. I'm glad you did. It's a whole nother life.
Yeah, and he's well, we won't get off on different branches of service, but it is just
we could, but we won't.
Yeah,
again, another conversation for another day.
Different day. So, he says one of the biggest fraternities ever. Absolutely. So this is So good discussion.
And they're better than Army and football, aren't they?
What's that?
They're better than Army and football, aren't they?
Army hasn't won I think in 13 or 14 years. So
that's what I'm saying.
But
maybe better in football.
Let me put it like this: I think all service is good service. So I'm not going to bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
My daughter's in the Army. I won't bag on that. But I think it was a recessive gene on her mother's side that made her join that. But anyway. So
not that you served for 22 years.
On looking at the generations, because like I said, a lot of things that make us different, but there's a lot of things that make us same. And I think you made some really good points on looking at communication being the key. How do we open up both lines of communication? How do we break down barriers? How do we build those bonds between us so that we can get more done and we can retain the people that we want to retain. So I'm going to shift rudder a little bit. Because it's happy hour, so we can't talk about the same thing all the time. Okay.
Stay there. I'm plugging in.
You are?
Yes.
You're plugging in. There we go.
Battery.
Okay, because your battery's going to die. Yeah, but good discussion on that. I appreciate all your thoughts. All right, so I asked Phil Gerbershak, who was my guest last week on Leadership Happy Hour.
Yeah.
Politics aside, no politics. As a leader, who would you follow as president? I mean, who's the person you're looking at? No politics, just as a leader. Who do you like?
As a leader, you mean of the people that are running for president now?
Yeah, I mean, not me. I'm not running. Who's
No, so you're talking about the current candidates running for political office of president. Who would I follow?
That's your choice, yeah. I mean, that's how I look at it. I mean, as military, growing up in the military, that's how I look at it. Is that who before politics, before policy, before plans, before all this stuff, I think about who would I follow, who would be worthy of my follow, and if they meet certain criteria, that's the first thing I consider because. That's what we're given. We're given our followership. We are giving, this whoever we elect, whether it's president, governor, whatever. We're giving them, our say in government.
Yeah,
we're giving them a follow.
Yeah,
we're
giving them a ton. That question's easy, and the nice thing is too. Everyone's entitled to an opinion. Mine is, of course, better than most, but I don't want to really. Oh, I already said that.
Yeah,
it must be the half of it's the half of your talk. Stella. The short answer to your question is who would I follow? Yeah. Kind of a dumb question, Chip, but I'm going to give you the answer anyway. Aaron Rodgers' girlfriend, Olivia Munn. Next.
All right. I didn't know she was running. That's awesome. All right.
Okay.
What qualities?
Oh, you said running. I just said
what qualities?
I thought you just said who would I follow? Oh, who would I? Aaron Rodgers' girl. This is my casual way, Bernie Sanders, of not answering the question.
Okay. I was just curious on what you looked for in a leader. We all have different things. We all have an ideal type, of what we look for in a leader.
No, I don't have an ideal type.
Sure you do.
No, I don't. That means that every candidate is going to be the same every 4 years.
No, I'm not talking about candidates. I'm talking about, we have a leadership prototype in our head of what we look for in a leader. And a lot of times, it fits a lot of things that we grew up with. And so, like for me, I like my leaders, with a little bit of moxie, a little bit of humility, a little bit of humor. I mean, I have a prototype in my head of what I like in a leader. It doesn't always fit that, but I have a prototype of like what I like in a leader. So I just like to ask that question. As far as, didn't mean to throw you a curveball on that.
That wasn't a curveball. I thought my Olivia Munn answer was great, and if Got Leadership is still on, I'd like to know what leadership thinks about that, because quite honestly, who wouldn't want to follow her? She's got some moxie. She can make me giggle. Oh, you're just reading now.
No, I'm getting ready for the next section. Because the next and final section is a good one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Barbara asked a good question. She's like, as a leader, do you like a leader that has the same character traits as, and I guess the last part would probably be me. Yeah, I think, that that's human nature. We like people we're naturally drawn to people that are like us. I like leaders that
that's a great question.
are like me. I a little bit of moxie, a little bit of humility. That's me. I like that in a leader. I like people that aren't afraid to stand up for what they believe in, but aren't afraid to laugh at their own mistakes and look to the team for the answers they don't have the answers for. So, and I don't know if I see that with any of with anybody that's running now. So it'll be interesting, the next couple of months to see how things kind of like are playing out, and hopefully some of the rhetoric dies down so we can get to the core of who the leader is versus.
Well, it does, because in the end there's going to be two folks. Then it'll be this one or that one. Some people will vote for that. Some people will vote for that. Then we'll have a new president, and
4 years later, we'll all be standing here. That's what always gets me about the whole thing, is that we all get so worked up, and there's so much passion about stuff on social media about this, that, or the other thing, and it's just 4 years. I'm still going to be around.
Well, you may be. But statistics show that of all the people that say they're actually going to move to Canada every 4 years when if so-and-so gets elected, one person actually moves. Now, I just made that up, but it kind of seems about right. Shut up about I'm going to move. Blah, blah, blah. You're not going to move anywhere. You're staying right here, because guess what? This is where everybody you love lives. Canada's a nice place to visit, but you're probably not going to move.
Well, no, I'm regardless of who wins, I'm going to move in with you. Barbara had a really good comment here. She says, I think a good leader has a love of learning, so they can always learn new things and make the best choices for those who follow them. I absolutely agree.
All right. So I got to say, between leadership and Barbara, there's a lot of good stuff. Then she said, okay, when they say that they want to move, what they are saying is that they are frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no
absolutely true. Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of people have been frustrated with this presidential election cycle then, because there's like,
I'm actually just truthfully looking forward to being over with so we can all go back to regular life. I am so.
I got to tell you,
I'm so tired.
I try to stay out of it until about August or October, but it's been a little difficult because one guy, Orange here and stuff, he's really good at getting media attention, but I do like what they do in other countries. Now the problem is, the U.S. is huge giant, and we know that. So we're the side, we're big. But gosh, couldn't they just boil things down to 2 months and that's it? You get 2 months, you get this much money to spend, winner take all, and so we can live our freaking lives.
Yeah.
Hey, crisscross to some of those states that mean the most to you. Skip over, whatever, and let's see who wins. It's too crazy. Too much money, too much time.
Yeah.
And then you've got elected officials that can't do their job because they're out trying to campaign to be president.
All right, we'll switch subjects simply because you're getting really worked up, and I don't want you to move because, like I said, regardless who wins,
I'm doing a hand thing.
I'm moving in
with
you.
I think Barb's liking our banter back and forth. Barbara.
So, hey, what time do you have? I want to make sure that I don't go over. I can't on my.
According to my time, at the tone, it will be 6 o'clock. Beep.
Okay. All right. So I do have to wrap up then because leadership happy hour, it's hour. Now, if we were really at a bar and having happy hour, I would probably dare you to do something really stupid because we're drinking.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that via Blab. So I'm just going to pull out my Would You Rather book and I'm going to ask you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to ask you 3 Would You Rathers. I'm not going to say these are politically correct because I have no idea where I'm going to turn to in here. So, Scott Lesnick, would you rather be cooked and hardened into a shrinky dink, or be placed on a giant spin art and be spun to death?
I'd have to go with the shrinky dink because the spinning thing, I get so just shrinky dink me.
All right, let me see. I'm going to open up again. I'm going to ask you one more.
Well, you said I get a total
Barbara
of
says
3,
no
though.
man wants to shrink anything. Giddy up. All right. Let me. All right. Random play. All right. Would you rather? And this is a thick book. All right. Would you rather have to use every page in this book as toilet paper, or have to smoke every page in this book?
That's easy. As a frequent smoker of paperbacks, I'm kind of getting tired of that, so I'd rather use the book to wipe my ass.
Well, would you rub it together enough? It's going to be soft. That's all. Hey, I grew up with one ply in the Navy. You can make anything work.
Is that true, or is that Pulp Fiction? Yes, please.
Hey,
okay.
So here's if people want to find you after this, where do they go, Scott?
Local bar, any bar you're at near your hometown, in your city, I will be there, my friends, because that's what I do on happy hour, or www.scottlesnick.com. But before we're done, you said 3 and I only got 2.
Oh, sorry. I forgot my last.
Just, I'm counting. I'm using new math for that. I've got this abacus thing.
All right. Would you rather be able to cool coffee to a drinkable level with merely one blow, or be able to miraculously neatly consume sloppy joes?
No, the coffee thing, because sloppy joes shouldn't be consumed neatly. The more you get over it, the more delicious it is. Take the bread and wipe it off and put it in your mouth. Coffee.
Absolutely. I like my sloppy.
That's my final answer.
I like my sloppy joes extra sloppy. So
they're called sloppy for a reason, right, Barbara? Yes.
So people can find you at scottlesnick.com.
They
You can find me at unconventionalleader.com. If you like this, I'm trying to do Leadership Happy Hour every week. So next week actually is St. Patrick's Day. So I might do it on the 16th, because on St. Patrick's Day, I probably will be celebrating St. Patrick's Day in a regular bar rather than just drink with my friends online.
Chip, thanks for having me. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, your attention, and for sharing a drink with me, my friend.
And one more thing. Let's not forget George Martin, the 5th Beatle, passed away the other day. He rocked. He made it happen. And I think all of us have a Beatles song we like or two. So here's to the Beatles.
Right. Hey, dude, don't be afraid. All right. Thanks,
pal.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Scott.